Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, and welcome to Work Trends with Megan and Biro. Whether you're here to network, learn, or share, we want you to have fun. During this live broadcast and Twitter chat, we'll discuss the future of work with smart and entertaining guests who value today's business and its impact on the world of work for the future. Stay tuned, because we start in 3, 2, 1.
Well, hello, everyone. Megan Barrow is not going to be with us today as our host. She is vacationing in beautiful Maine, actually an island off the coast of Maine, and she is having some pretty significant connectivity issues. So you are stuck with me today. This is Cindy Travella. I am the events manager here at Talent Culture, and one of the people behind the scenes making these events happen every week. So, welcome everyone to another informative Talent Culture Work Trends live podcast and Twitter chat. So, to start, of course, we always want to begin all of our shows by saying thank you to all of our friends, our community members, our sponsors, and of course our wonderful guests that come on every week that make this show a reality. So today we have a wonderful guest who came to us as a referral from a prior wonderful guest named Patrick Antrim. So today we're going to be speaking with Mike Lindstrom. And Mike is a communications expert. And we all know, whether we work in any department, in any capacity, we know that communication is a great topic, very important. Sometimes it's discussed too much without any great outcome. So today, we're going to be discussing meaningful communications and getting the most impact that you can out of them. So, meaningful communications has a dramatic impact on happiness and morale in all facets of our life. Today, we're going to cover why engaging people around you on a deeper level actually triggers happiness in the brain and creates a strong rapport. Our awesome guest, Mike Lindstrom, is going to offer us some powerful communication tips and tools that's going to help all of us better understand the impact of our words on others. So let me introduce him. Mike Lindstrom is a communication expert, author, and professional speaker. He began his personal development journey after graduating from law school and working under the tutelage of famed motivational speaker, the Tony Robbins. He works with professionals and athletes and celebrities on developing their next level plan for life and business. He recently authored the book, What's Your Story? Discover the Man Behind Your Dad. Very interesting title. So let's get going. Mike, welcome to Work Trends. We're very
Thank you so much. I'm excited.
Yeah, we are too. You know, we talk about communications a lot, and it's been a topic on our show many times because obviously it's something that affects everyone in every capacity in their work life, in their personal life. Interpersonal skills are extremely important. So let's get going. Let's chat it up.
I love it.
Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what brought you to this place in your life and career? How did you get started?
Well, a lot of turns along the way. You know, my goal as a young man was to become a lawyer, and when I was my second or third year of law school, I realized it wasn't the destiny that I thought, but I wanted to finish my start, so I graduated from law school, became a lawyer per se, but I realized that's not something I wanted to do. Started putting my feelers out there, and what do you know, I was living in San Diego at the time, and Anthony Robbins, his headquarters is out of San Diego, and I had a friend of a friend who got a job there and kept ranting about this job where you're a speaker and you travel and you influence people in a positive way and meet all kinds of awesome people. And I thought, my gosh, why wouldn't I want to at least check that out? Went through a pretty rigorous process to get the one of the spots on the team to represent Tony around the North American territory, and joined up with that team in 1998, and so began my personal development journey. Worked for him for a couple of years. We started a coaching company, his company called Robbins Results Partnership. Built that up to an amazing impact in the industry. Coaching was just kind of coming about as a sexy term in the corporate America at the time. I helped Tony build that for his organization, and then I branched off, started my own thing, started building my own clients, and here we are, 16 years later, doing my thing.
Wow, how interesting. So are you still friends with Tony Robbins? You still see him?
Yeah, we're friends. We see each other on the street. We of course know each other, give each other a big hug. We're more text friends and social media friends. Very busy guy. He's involved with so many different projects. Really close with some of his family members. His son Josh, who lives in San Diego. Him and I are good friends. He's actually endorsed my book, and we text a lot. That's the thing about social media. You kind of connect with people with social media anymore, but yeah, it's still connected.
Wow, very nice. Excellent. See, you're keeping up your communications very well.
Got to do it.
Yeah. So, the topic of communications, it would almost seem like, people talk, they make a point, they're giving their insight to someone else, but communication is such an important tool. Yet so many people get it wrong. Why is that?
Mm-hmm. We're not really taught how to communicate. I mean, yeah, you learn from your parents how to speak English when you're a little kid, but it's very rare that you see high school or college effective communication. It's something that we're not really taught. So we quite frankly mirror a lot of that stuff from our own parents, which could be good or bad. I did hear recently that because of social media, cell phones, and technology, a lot of colleges are actually instituting freshman classes on how to have a conversation, which is kind of sad, but the reality is we're never really taught that. So we bring a lot of our own stuff, issues, limiting beliefs, our past stuff into our communication, and I think that's where the disconnect is. I mean, let me tell you, social media and the cell phone have definitely widened the gap on how people effectively communicate.
Yeah. One of the things about communication that I've read about is people talk and they're listening to somebody else talk, but they're not really paying attention because they're busy thinking about what they're going to say next. So they
That's
never
right.
really catch on to what the person is saying. You agree with that?
Yeah, you're already always listening, is what I say. You're already always listening. You're thinking ahead as to what you want to say, and I think that's one of the challenges, the difference between hearing somebody and listening to somebody. Listening to somebody is being engaged, where you're present. That's something I teach parents a lot in communication is, when you're with your children, whether at the dinner table or at home, make them look you in the eye and get down at their level and really engage. We're as parents, we're often buried in our own cell phones and technology and not really present with our own children. So it's the same thing at the workplace. Somebody comes in your office, you're on your computer, you're not looking at them, you're at a task at hand. You can hear what they're saying, but you're not totally present with what they're saying. So I always say go back to being present with people, work on your listening skills, and quit, shut that voice off. We talk to ourselves at 1,000 words a minute. Most of it's not positive. We're worried about the next thing, the stress. What am I going to say next? How am I going to look good? How am I going to be right? How am I going to survive the moment or the day? And when you just get out of that mode, you're actually engaged with people.
Very interesting. So how do we teach people how to better engage at that deeper level, and how do we make them understand there's so much benefit to them if they do this?
Well, one of the things about when you're really truly engaged with people and you really do present with them, you have emotions attached to it, and you allow yourself to be attached to that individual or that group. It could be in a meeting or it could be in a family setting, and I think that's where we miss. If you really get associated with being connected to somebody. The easiest communication is one-to-one. Obviously, when you get a bigger group, it gets more complex. But when you have the emotional connection with that person, you feel their pain, you feel their happiness, you feel their excitement about something. You really connect with them, and it does literally trigger parts of the brain which can create happiness, especially when you're having a nice conversation. One of the things I was talking to a friend the other day, and he's like, gosh, it's so neat when you just sit down with old friends and, 4 hours goes by and you don't even realize it because you're just so enthralled in the conversation. Well, there's a reason why, because the emotional part of the brain is connected, and you're not staring at your watch and keep looking down at your your cell phone. That's one of the powers of communication is when you really truly engage, you're triggering parts of the brain that make you feel good.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. When you talk about people being able to relate to what someone is saying and feeling their pain, that to me, it smacks of emotional intelligence. So is communication an offshoot of that? What is your opinion on that one?
Yeah, it is. I mean, people who have a high level of what we call in behavior is sensory acuity. Sensory acuity means heightened senses. You listen, you hear, you feel. You kind of use the senses: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, which means feeling. When you have a heightened sense of that, you're more engaged with things that are going on around you. You're paying attention, not just to the person that's across from you, but your peripheral vision, what's going on in the background. So when you engage that level of the brain, you're allowing that emotion to come in. But when you have low sensory acuity, or some people might say they don't have any filters, or they're just bad listeners, is another way people might think of it. They're not present with people. Then there's no way to create the emotion. You just heard it. You didn't feel it. You didn't get that emotion. You didn't get the impact of what that individual is trying to portray in that conversation.
So how do people break those bad habits that they have when it comes to poor communications and start to really learn, what it means to have a meaningful conversation?
I'll tell you one thing is put the darn cell phone down. Create rules of engagement around yourself, around your home, around your children, at work. I saw a Facebook post recently. It was a junior high, and I don't remember where it was, but you literally have a placeholder for your cell phone. So when you come into the school, you drop your cell phone in this little slot with your name on it. So that means while you're at school, you're not on your cell phone. Well, guess what? You're not on your cell phone. You're probably listening, probably engaging with what your math teacher's telling you. And you know what? I joked on a tweet about it. Why don't you do the same thing at home? You got 4 or 5 people in your house. When you check in at 8 o'clock at night or whatever time you designate, everybody puts their phone in the slot, put the iPad in there, and you engage with each other. That's something that we've gotten away from, is just that simple engagement and that interface. So number one is put the technology down. And number 2, practice your listening. It's simple. When you go to a restaurant, you have a waitress or a waiter come up to you. Actually look them in the face and engage them. You go to the supermarket a couple times a week and somebody asks you, hey, how's your day going? Just practice these things when it doesn't really matter. When the more you practice in those times, when it really matters is when you're in a big business deal, or you're in an argument with your spouse, or you're trying to have a nice, healthy conversation with somebody who's a friend. So that's when it's game on in communication. But practice your listening. Such a huge thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would think it is. So, Mike, very interesting book title. Tell us more about your book. What's your story? Discover the man behind your dad. And was it really written specifically for your kids?
Yeah, you know what? It's a quick story. So my wife was pregnant with our first son 8 years ago, and I read a book called Questions from My Father, which is written by Vincent Staniforth, who happens to be my co-author now. And I'm a journaler and a writer. So I journaled all 150-odd questions that he posed in his book, and I transcribed them into a journal, and I wrote to my future son all the answers. What were the rituals in the family, things that I wanted him to know, life values, et cetera, et cetera. So God forbid if I were to pass at an early age, he would have at least a roadmap as to who his dad was. So it inspired me to want to reach out to this gentleman, Vincent Staniforth, at some point in my career and rewrite the book. So I reached out to him in last year, it was 2015, and I hit him up on LinkedIn, of all places. Didn't know him from anybody, so he was a business guy in the UK, and said, hey, I have an idea. I read your book a long time ago, and it changed my life. I speak on it. I talk to people about it. It inspires people, and a lot's happened in the world since 1998 when you wrote it, and I want to contribute to it. And we jumped on a series of calls, and he said, let's do it. We pitched a couple publishers. We found our home at Post Hill Press. They said, how quickly can you write it? And we wrote it in a matter of a couple months, submitted it, and it came out for Father's Day. So we're excited about the brand, What's Your Story, because everybody has a story. It's one of my favorite questions to ask anybody. What's your story? It gives you a chance to start wherever you want. Start at the beginning. Tell me your bio. Tell me about your kids. It gives you a lot of insight when you ask somebody that question. Where they start when they answer that question. What's your story? Very important. Very powerful.
So when you ask people what's your story and they tell you what they do for a living, how does that resonate with you? What are you thinking when people do that?
Well, when I usually hear an answer like that, I usually look at them a little bit more congruently, and I say, no, seriously, what's your story? And that makes them rethink. They're like, oh, he wants to know who I am. That's exactly what I meant. You going into, I'm a lawyer and I work at this big law firm. That's not really who you are. That's an identity that you have, but that's not really who you are. So I love it when I get people to open up, because truly what binds people is information. And when you just reach out and talk to people, you have information is really what connects people. So when you get people's story out on the table, you start to really see what people are all about.
Absolutely. So I have a question. Has your son read this book?
Well, my son is 8, and the answer, he's reading it with me. We actually have we have an application that we'll be launching this year. It's called EveryStory.us. EveryStory.us is an app you can download, and it actually it gives you opportunity to take pictures and talk into your phone and answer questions. So we're working on that right now. It's actually in beta. Anybody who's listening could actually go play with it. But we'll have the questions preloaded into the app. So every week, let's say you want to answer one question, because there's 120 odd questions in our book that we pose that you'd want to get to know about your father or a man in your life, or maybe you want to hand to your kids. So what's pretty cool is my son and I, we actually open up the book. He reads the question into the app, records it, and then I hit the record button, and then I talk into the app and answer the question. So it's not just a journal anymore. It's now we're using technology to our advantage. And when we sit down with the book, he'll ask, okay, Daddy, what question are we going to do today? So we don't do it all at once. We just do one or two questions at a time. I'll answer for maybe a minute or two into the app. But what I've already done separately is written to these guys, and I'm in the process of answering the questions that are in the new book in written form, because I love the solace of sitting down at a coffee shop and putting on some music and writing out, the answers to these questions. So the answer is yes. He's 8 and learning to read, but he's learning how to learn Daddy's story.
That's wonderful. I love that. What a great bonding activity to do with your child.
It is. That's one of the things that creates is a bond, just with family. And one thing we talk about in happiness, there was a study done a few years ago, and it talked about this worldwide study on happiness. These professors that studied levels of the brain and activity with these questionnaires, et cetera, and they realized that 50%, that's 50, of levels of happiness is genetic. 40% is your outlook on life, or what I call conscious choice, and 10% is your general life circumstance, which would be if you're educated, where you live, weather, if you're married, you have kids, that stuff would influence happiness. But in that 40% conscious choice, they found that in that 40%, conversation, community, and relatedness triggers happiness. That's why it's no accident when you look at the study, the happiest countries in the world, Denmark, Sweden, Norway. And the thing they found in these countries is they're highly communal. They have rituals in their communities where they create conversation. Going down to the local, there's like these squares in Denmark. I studied abroad in Copenhagen, so I was lucky enough my junior year of college to see this firsthand, where every Friday we would go down this little area, what we would call, I guess, a pub in the United States, but it's not really a pub. It's more like a community center with a bar. And every Friday, that neighborhood goes down to that area, and they sit there and talk about the week. It's all positive. It's fun. It's cheery. It's laughter. They're drinking their Tuborg or their Carlsberg beer and having fun, and I'm like, gosh, this would be pretty cool. Like if my whole neighborhood had its spot where we would go. Well, we don't do that in the United States. We don't facilitate that. So that 40% can be triggered by just simply having conversation.
There you go, conversation. So you mentioned something about conscious voice. Let's talk about that in communication. So when people are sitting down and they're talking, as far as the person who's currently speaking, let's say, are they really looking for honesty, or are they looking for themselves to have honest conversation? It's almost like people talk. They want to tell a story, but it might not always be a true story. Maybe something that they think is more interesting than the truth. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think when people let's start with this. Number one, everyone's favorite topic is themselves. Okay, people want to talk about themselves, and I don't mean like braggadocio. I'm talking about, for example, when people ask me my story and what I'm about, I love talking about my children. I love talking about my wife. I'm proud of her. She's worked hard to get to where she's at. So when I talk about that stuff, that's my way of telling you, hey, this is important to me. So when I flip the script and ask you the question, well, tell me about yourself or what you're about, my hope is that you want to tell me what's really important to you. But the challenges we have as human beings is we have these filters. And I mentioned it earlier. We want to look good, we want to be right, and we want to survive. Not just survive life, but survive the moment, survive the day, survive the meeting, survive the interaction. So these three things are playing at each other all the time. And when you're in Be Right or you're in Look Good, you're thinking about yourself. You're not really thinking about what's in front of you or the things that really matter. So I think when people get into opening up more, opening up about themselves, being more vulnerable with people, tell your story at a deeper level, it starts to create that interaction with the other person to do the same thing. It lets you know, hey, I'm comfortable telling you about my truths and my family, and I'm going to let you know that straight away. That lets the person know, hey, it's okay for you to do the same. Hey, brag about your kid. Tell me how great your kid is. And we all joke that every parent's kid is the best kid on the planet. Well, of course they are, according to their own parent, but that's okay. Let them talk about those things that really matter most. Get that truth out, but be willing to go there with people. Go beyond what I say, that 6-foot communication. People swim at shallow levels. I use the ocean as a metaphor. Go to the bottom of the ocean. Yeah, it's cold down there. Yeah, it's dark down there. But you know what? That's where life exists. It doesn't exist in the top 6 feet where it's shallow and warm. You got to be willing to go deeper with people to really uncover their truths and their values.
I agree. So I have a question for you. Opinion here. Do you think most people prefer to be right or be liked?
That's a good question. It's a really good question. I think it's probably the latter, to be liked. I do know studies on the whole look good, be right, survive. A lot of people are more look good people, which is kind of like being liked, where smaller percentages look good, or be right people. If you divide the pie into 3, but if you're bringing that fourth one in to be liked, everybody wants to be liked. Almost 100%. I would say 100% of people, in some way, shape, or form, they want to be accepted. They want to be a part of it. It's part of our human needs. It's contribution. It's significance. The 6 human needs. You look at them. A lot of them really ring to being liked. And I would say that being liked is probably going to beat out being right. But be right's not too far behind. I will tell you that.
Do you think that might be why people may embellish or not communicate at that really deep, honest level that they could?
I think it's fear. I think people are afraid. People are really afraid to be vulnerable with other people because it's like it shows who you really are. So people protect themselves with that kind of that shroud of ego or that shroud of that bolster of the story or the braggadocio. And of course, I've been doing communication for 18 years, so it's easy for me to spot, inside of 30 seconds when somebody's trying to put on a front, because the truth is, I don't care how important that person is, their title, how much money they make. The truth is, they have a life story. They have life experiences. They have a belief system, and they have human needs. So if I can get that person to remove that persona, that is celebrity, that is athlete, that is CEO, and say, you know what, I don't really care about all that stuff. I can read your stats. Okay, I want to know who you are. Tell me who you are. Tell me your story, because I bet you have a life story. I bet you have fears. I bet you have things like every human being that happened to you between 5 and 12 years old that cause you to behave the way you do as a 50-year-old powerful CEO. So let's talk about that. People go, whoa, like this guy wants to go there. Yeah, I want to go there. I want to know who you are. I don't care about your title. I can read that. You're a publicly traded company. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely. That's really, really interesting. I think you missed your calling, Mike. You should have been a psychologist or something.
I appreciate that.
So, what do you think about the way that I'm gonna geographically send us to the North American region here of the globe? How would you sum up our communication skills here in North America, specifically the United States?
Shallow. I mean, I said 6 foot. I literally use that in my seminars. I draw this ocean metaphor up, and I say I put a line at 6 foot, and I put the top of the ocean with the little waves, and I say, here's where life exists. You don't believe? Just go out and ask people, hey, how you doing today? And they're going to tell you, good, great, okay, that's good. No, really. How are you doing today? Let's try again. And they'll go, oh, like you really want to know how I'm doing. Yeah, I want to go beyond 6 feet. Don't give me the 6 foot answer like you always do when somebody asks you how you're doing. I tell anybody on this call or in this podcast, go try it. When somebody asks you how you're doing today, just for fun, go like this. Do you really want to know? Do you really want to know? Because I'll tell you. I got a bunch of stuff going on in my life, and I'd love to share it with you. People will go, whoa, too much information. All right, let's back up. I was just trying to ask you how you're doing. I know, and I want to tell you. And I want to tell you beyond a 6 foot answer because I think you care about me. You work with me. You're my family member. You're my friend. So practice that. Challenge people to go deeper. But I think that's part of our culture is that we swim at 6 feet, and we're not willing to go there with people.
But don't you think sometimes, too, it's that people don't pose their I'm going to call it their garbage on other people, like they might feel that it's inappropriate for them to do that? The garbage or their issues? Yeah, their issues. Like they're having a really
like I said, everybody's got them. So, you got to pick a time and a place, to dump out your baggage. But everybody has it. That's the presumption I make. When I do seminars, I do work a lot in Fortune 500 companies, and one of my intros I'll do, I have like 100 CEOs in the room, and I start off with this. I say, you know what? Every single one of you has issues, 100% of you. Every one of you has issues. So today, we don't necessarily need to talk about those issues, but I just want you to own it. Despite your title, despite your money, and all that stuff that is your stature, let's get down and get real with each other about what your story is and what are those pains. Whether you want to share or not is irrelevant. But I'm going to presume as I talk to you adults in this room that you're all children at some point and you all have life experiences that shaped who you are. So let's talk to each other like that today. Boom, it shifts the whole room. They're like, wow, this is authentic. Like this is real. He's not going to throw a 50-page deck up on the screen and talk at me. He's going to talk with me. That's a conversation, and that's the difference. But you got to pick and choose when you're going to dump out your baggage. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. In your presentations, you provide a safe zone for people, so it's very comfortable for them, to do that. So I can definitely tell. So. Okay, this is a very nosy question, but
yeah.
We want to know. Tell us something about Tony Robbins that the general public doesn't know.
Let's see. I would say one thing that he believes as a boss is that, and you may hear this in tones of his teaching, there's no such thing as an excuse. Period. Like he beats you up with that, in behind closed doors. He may speak to it a little bit on stage, but that's his belief system. So imagine you work for a boss who that's his belief. So when you didn't get something done, the natural tendency is to come back with a reason why you didn't do it. That's human behavior. Well, he's not going to stand for that. So what it forces you to do as the employee is rethink your own stuff and go, why didn't I get that done? It's a very powerful belief system that most people, quite frankly, don't have. I borrowed it from him because he beat me up with it for 2 years. So I teach that I teach that now to my kids. My kids are now 5 and 8. There's no such thing as an excuse. So when you when you buy that belief, it forces you to rethink your own stuff, and it's a very powerful thing to give to another individual. So that's something that I would say that a lot of people don't know.
Fantastic. Well, that was a wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I loved learning more about all these communication priorities, and I know our community did too, Mike. Thank you so much. And everyone, we are now going over to the Twitter sphere to continue the conversation. Thanks again, Mike. Great talking with you.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.